Hello, I'm Sharon Douglas, your host for Things You Need to Know. Thank you for joining us for episode number 3, where we're covering insurances and bonding. And I'm so excited to have our speaker here today, Bradley Douglas from Risk Protection Managers. Hello, Bradley.
Hey, good morning, Sharon Douglas, and thank you for inviting me. As my mother said, my name is Brad Douglas, and I'm with Risk Protection Managers in San Antonio, Texas. And today we're going to go over construction risk.
Brad, why don't you give us an overview of insurances and why small contractors need to have insurances?
So, a brief overview on insurance. Insurance is providence. It's made for when things go wrong. You're not purchasing insurance proactively so that you can prevent things from happening. You're purchasing it in the likelihood that things do happen and you want to move on proactively to make sure that you don't face financial ruin because of those things.
Brad, let me stop right there and ask you about COI. What is a COI?
Certificate of insurance is provided to a general contractor or contractor at the time of contracting or upon request. The reason COI is effective is because it helps a contractor to mitigate their overall risk among subcontractors. Certificate of insurance will contain your GL policy and your umbrella policy, your automobile policy and your workman's comp, but they're going to have different aggregate limits for each. So you want to have that the expectation set with the general contractor of what they need for their certificate of insurance before entering the project.
Can you break that down for us into the different areas of insurances that we have?
Auto liability insurance is third-party insurance, first-party insurance, so it's hybrid. It's requested because you got vehicles on site and you got vehicles that are going to be transporting materials and personnel to and from site. This places you at an exposure. Exposure is being the main thing that caused harm. The producing harm, the producing cause is going to be limited or mitigated by having insurance. If you get on a wreck on site and you don't have automobile coverage, there could be a possibility where 3 or 4 contractors are involved. This is what we call segregating the risk.
Why don't we go back and cover the one that is workers' comp? Again, Brad, we need your experience and your professional outlook on this.
Workers' compensation insurance is placed so that you can take care of the inevitability and the inevitable things that happen on a job site involving personnel. Workers' compensation is not mandatory in the state of Texas, but facially, if you do not have workers' compensation, they will view it as negligence. So workers' compensation insurance is very important because you have injuries that are involved in the construction space. Injuries, deaths, and catastrophic losses happen quite frequently. Workers' compensation insurance seeks to mitigate your direct risk where those risks are concerned. Workers' compensation has a 3-part model, and it's going to have to do with 3 things. Your experience modification rating, which is your EMR score. Your EMR score directly correlates with how many claims you've had in a workers' compensation claim over the past 3 years. Your modification rating will go up or down based upon the number of claims and the size of claims filed. Next, your workers' comp is going to go dollar for dollar. So your payroll expenses are going to be the things that are gauged against it to decide whether overall exposure is net, meaning it's the exact same amount that you're going to have, because you have to incorporate that for the last part. The last part is payment for being out of work. So if a person does face an injury, they need to make sure that you're viable and you guys still have the ability to bring that person back at the same pay grade or take care of him through their convalescence, he or she, through their convalescence, and make for certain that they don't suffer significant financial fallout due to their injury on the job. They have death benefits with workers' compensation insurance that are also paid out. You're going to face all kinds of things in these forums. And the biggest thing to remember is it gets between you and liability. So workmen's compensation insurance will also cover legal expenses and the size of claims and stuff that are filed in conjunction with these particular instances. So pollution insurance. Pollution insurance is not always going to be required. In the case of maybe a water table interaction or some place where you're going to have some EPA regulations or some other significant regulations like state parks, government lands, where lead shit and runoff and things of that nature are heavily policed. You're going to make sure that you have insurance against the damages that are incurred there. The thing about that is those damages can be farther reaching and they can have a causal basis for associating you with damages that you had nothing to do with down the road. These are pretty straightforward per se laws on the books. And so those things, frightening though they may be and approachable though they may seem, with proper insurance, you won't face liability should the need arise.
What about umbrella insurances? I get excited about that because a lot of times we go into insurances and we really don't understand when a contractor asks us for umbrella insurances. Can you elaborate on that?
So as a small contractor, once again, your COI, depending upon whether they have a limit or not, will require an umbrella in conjunction with your GL. Your umbrella policy, as I said before, is not triggered until the aggregate limit or the per occurrence limit is reached on your general liability policy. The umbrella is then triggered. It comes down to provide an extra layer of protection up to the amount specified in the contract. Once again, your general liability insurance has specific limits. Once those limits are reached, or you go past those limits, you're going to see the umbrella come down and cover the additional expenses. These things often, depending upon the language of your contract, can also be from a legal perspective. If you pay for the coverage of legal defense, if somebody fines against you for negligence or a tort matter, then you're going to face those things as well. The umbrella will come down to cover the additional expenses.
What is professional liability insurance?
Professional liability insurance, the brain insurance. In your professional capacity, you're going to do any number of things on a day-to-day basis, sign any number of papers on a day-to-day basis that might go forward in the world and cause a harm, or cause a damage. If your professional function is found to be the producing cause of the harm associated, you are liable. This is important. This is important because we have engineers in our field. If an engineer makes an overcalculation or a misstep or an undercalculation or a misstep, he's liable for what's known as omissions or statements of error. In this case, we'll just take one example being the Dallas Cowboys Stadium where the guy was not in fact an engineer, but he was certified and he was signed as a certified contractor with these people. All these people are sitting on the bleachers designed by him, administered by him. They come tumbling down. Who do you think was liable for that? Not everybody's Jerry Jones. Not everybody has that much money on hand. This is why we have professional liability insurance.
The other thing, and I'm going to say this, Brad is my insurance agent. So therefore, there were different things that I didn't know that got me in trouble. However, because we've covered these things, I'm going to ask you the question. Construction liability insurance. What does that cover and why should we have that?
Construction insurance equipment is needed when you have construction equipment. So inland marine insurance policies are things that cover things that are not auto policies, things that can move, but don't typically have to move in the sense of being on a freeway or commuting. So you're not facing the exact type of exposures. Not saying the exposures are not significant, because Lord knows a bobcat or a cherry picker or a Skytrack are going to incur significant amounts of exposure to risk and harm that an automobile would not. Also, inland marine covers generators, tools, anything that's kind of movable, not tied down, but not an automobile policy. So you can put your trailers, like I said, your tools, your bobcats, your Skytracks, the things that are on the site that are going to be movable, but not necessarily automobile.
Brad, all this information is great. Explain to us the EMOD or EMR rating.
Loss runs. So you're going to get your loss runs from me. If I'm your broker or your agent, I'm going to provide you with loss runs in order to establish where we are as far as the cost of insurance. Your loss runs are determinative. Once again, I'm going to use that word actuarial, because if you filed significant amounts of claims, your loss runs are essentially what an EMR rating is for your workman's comp. They're going to be for the rest of your insurance. Your loss runs go as a holistic number. If you filed a bunch of claims for theft, for example, you filed a bunch of claims for, uninsured, underinsured motorists, you filed a bunch of claims in any area of insurance, you're going to see that on your loss runs, how much you have claimed in loss over the period of time stipulated in the insurance contract.
Would you say, Brad, that bonding is absolutely necessary?
In trying to get bonded for the first time, think proactively. You want to make for certain that you have your financials for 3 years. You want to make sure that your EMR score is doing well. You also want to make sure that you have material costs and setups. Secondary vendors are very important, and your funding and financing under control. Your credit scores also need to be pretty good in order to get bonded, depending upon the size of the bond. Once again, a bonding agent is a surety between you and one other party. If you're going to get bonded, they need to know that you have the processes in place to complete the job. They need to know that you have the credit in place to buy things in case some overruns happen, cost overruns, for example, lack of material goods, for example, theft, and in the event of a catastrophic loss, insurance. So we're going to want to see your entire insurance plan, your loss runs, your EMR score. These various things all go into making a decision and establishing what your bonding capacity is. That and the type of job you've completed before. So in order to get further jobs or new jobs with bigger bonding capacities, you would want to have completed a job bonded at a lower number so they know that you have the capability to do it. You want to have your capability statements as well. You want to make for certain that your company information, everything from your mission statement to your business's primary purpose is enumerated and everything is held tight. You also want to make for certain that you approach your bonding agent or your insurance agent prior to it and provide them with all this information so they're able to gauge year over year where you should be. And if we need to shop with another bonding person, you want to have all that stuff on hand so you can provide it at a moment's notice should a job come up. You know, what it comes down to is you want to be prepared. You want to make for certain that your financial agency, your bank, your creditor, everybody has the information ready to present. In getting bonded initially, you'll do some smaller jobs. I'd say growing your bonding capacity from a smaller perspective provides you with a lower amount of risk. You go in there and you build on that. So year over year, you want to make sure, hey, I was doing about $350,000 in bonded work last year. That was my bonding capacity. Next year, my goal is this. You have to keep all of those methodologies in line in order to get there. And so it's important that from an organizational perspective, you are aware of those numbers. And like I said, finances and insurance, those are the primaries, but you want to make for certain that the rest of your company's information is also, ship shape and watertight. The thing about bonding is it's completely based on class, right? The fear of bonding comes from the fact that it's hard to get in. There's barriers to entry, right? And this has been a consistent thing that I said in small contracting circles because people are afraid to go up against the big boys or to partner with somebody else because they lose their autonomy. They lose their ability to kind of negotiate their own terms. Sometimes getting a bond takes going in on a joint venture project with somebody that has a higher bonding capacity, and they're going to take the lead on it. That's fearful for a lot of reasons. Like I said, you need to have common sense limits in place so that you know who you're working with. I don't have any problem with telling a person, hey, look, I don't think that's a great idea from a bonding perspective because this person is at capacity and they're not going to have the ability to bring you forward with them. But if you are working with somebody who plans on growing you or helping you grow as a company, then your primary thing should be looking at jobs that are realistic, jobs that don't take a whole lot of guesswork, and jobs that you can complete. You have to know if you can complete the job. A lot of people think that all money is good money, and you've heard the saying. It bodes twice as hard for bonding because once you bond, that's a third-party surety, which is assuring that person that they're going to do it. Once you're off the job, if you don't complete the job, that surety kicks in, and it is immediately catastrophic to your bonding capacity. Meaning all the hard work you put in with keeping all this stuff together, your financials, your insurance, all for naught. So it is something to be afraid of, but not with proper planning. And if you get with a qualified insurance agent or broker, they can help you out with these things and walk you through the process.
Thank you so much, Brad. That is a wealth of information, a wealth of knowledge. We appreciate your time. To our audience, thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube and Facebook. If you have any questions, please leave those also. This is Sharon Douglas, your host for Things You Need to Know.